So hello everyone and welcome to my channel, and in today's video we're going to be recapping the new Disney Plus series Percy Jackson and the Olympians episode 2. So in the last episode we are introduced to the world of Percy Jackson and how he ended up at Camp Half-Blood. He's in a lot of danger and is transported to the Camp Half-Blood for safety, and while he's transported his mom ends up evaporating while trying to protect him. So I'll be recapping the entire series as the episodes release, so if you're liking the content please give a like to the channel, please sub to the channel as well. Now just keep in mind that this episode is actually very explanation heavy and very content heavy, so there are a lot of backstories that I'll try to go through as well as we're going through the episode too. Now let's get into the episode recap with Percy Jackson episode 2, I Become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom.
I'm gonna need a sword.
So the episode starts off with Percy waking up from the infirmary of Camp Half-Blood. There's a storm brewing with Annabeth standing over his bed, which may be another sense of foreshadowing again going on with this imagery, as Annabeth will play a big part in the Percy Jackson story. A few hours later, Percy then falls back asleep and wakes up with Grover this time by his bedside. Percy is still processing losing his mother and is just super depressed, so Percy tells Grover that he vows to find his father and address all that's been happening to him. Percy walks outside and then sees Dionysus, aka Mr. D, and Mr. Brummer's empty wheelchair. He introduces himself to Dionysus and he asks who's in charge of the camp and that he is looking for his father. Dionysus could care less, even referring to him as Peter Johnson, as Grover runs out and tells Percy that his name is Mr. D and that he is the camp director of Camp Half-Blood. Now Mr. D trolls Percy into semi-believing that he is actually the father, and Grover explains to Percy that Mr. D is the Greek god Dionysus. So Dionysus is the god of winemaking, orchards and fruit, vegetation, fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theater. So his title is perfect for a camp director. The theater part comes into play where Mr. D actually ends up trolling Percy multiple times. I also found it hilarious how Percy addresses Mr. D as Your Highness when in reality he could be an asshole most of the time. Chiron then pops up in full form. I think this is actually the first time Percy's getting a real close-up look at just how big Chiron is compared to when he was just sitting in the wheelchair. Grover tells Percy that Mr. Brummer's real name is Chiron and that he is the camp activities director for Camp Half-Blood and that he's responsible for training the best of heroes at the camp. So Percy and Chiron then go on for a walk as Grover still feels guilty by what happened to Percy's mom while he was bringing him to Camp Half-Blood. Chiron explains that Camp Half-Blood is very sacred to the point where humans can't see the camp, monsters, beasts, and beings cannot enter inside as well. It's also the safest possible place for a demigod to be. It is located on Long Island, not too far from where Olympus is located. So now there's a brief few seconds where there's a little owl perched up upon the tree as Chiron is explaining everything to Percy, and this owl is actually the symbol of Athena, who is the goddess of wisdom. Important proof that her daughter Annabeth Chase, who is also at the camp as well, most likely sent the owl to listen in on their conversation, as she has a hunch that Percy will play a big role in her story as well. Chiron tells Percy that the pen sword will always be with him unless he decides to surrender it, as we get a glimpse on how magical objects operate in the non-ordinary world. Chiron then shows Percy the 12 camp cabins for the 12 main Olympian gods. So the 12 main Olympian gods are Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Ares, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, Hermes, and Dionysus. So there's actually a cabin for unclaimed children, and by default, they go under the Hermes cabin, alongside his claimed children. Hermes being the god of travelers. Some of the gods really do not care for their children at all or want nothing to do with them, but they are still demigods, so they still have that sense on them that can attract monsters and beings, so they are still protected at Camp Half-Blood. So demigods typically find out who their parent is by a process called being claimed. Usually a signal or a connection moment that will typically indicate which god the child belongs to. A god or goddess decides to claim their children whenever they want. They may not even claim them at all. A very sad reality. So now Chiron definitely knows who Percy's father is, as I'm pretty sure Poseidon had a helping hand alongside Chiron, Sally Jackson, Grover, and Dionysus in getting Percy to Camp Half-Blood in the first place with all that rain he dumped onto New York City and Long Island. Chiron introduces Percy to the camp and the other kids could possibly care less. We then get introduced to Luke, who is the counselor for the Hermes cabin and who is the son of Hermes. He then says that he knows what Percy is going through and offers a hand in friendship. Luke is going to play a pivotal role in the series, so keep an eye out on him. We then see Grover enter a forest away from the camp as he encounters a human-like figure embedded into a tree. Now, this human-like figure is actually called a dryad, and her name is Helena. Dryads are wood nymph spirits that live in the forest and may plant themselves within the trees. Helena and Grover seem to have a positive connection, and that is in part to Grover being a satyr. So Helena leads Grover into this council-like area in the forest. The council is actually called the Council of Cloven Elders, which is basically the authoritative body for the satyrs with their prime goal of preserving nature. Grover still feels really guilty about Percy's mom's disappearance and wanted to get down to the bottom of it by seeking the council's advice. We then pan into Grover bursting into Chiron and Mr. D playing a card game and explaining to them that Sally Jackson couldn't have just died, or her body would have just obviously been squished by the Minotaur, but instead she evaporated. Grover explains that when a human is on their last legs of life before dying, Hades can actually seek them out and bring them to the underworld, which is how they evaporate. Now, Mr. D and Chiron are very aware of this, but they insist on keeping Percy in the dark to protect him from wanting to go out to find her. Mr. D says something very interesting here as he tells Grover that there are more powerful forces at work here, forces who have laid waste to the earth before. Now, this is a definite foreshadowing into the possible role the Titans may actually be playing in this whole saga. So, we see Percy having another lifelike dream vision of someone calling for him to have justice and to seek out revenge, and then the ground crumbling before him. Some dark force is communicating with Percy through these visions. Jumping the gun here, we see an immediate panning to Luke, who asks Percy if he is okay. We see Percy wake up, but in the foreground of this shot is a campfire. We also pan into Luke's face reflecting those fire flames. Since fire is water's opposite, Percy needs to put out those flames, signaling that a battle with Luke is in the imminent future. Luke also tells Percy that demigods have many different neurological anomalies, such as daydreaming, ADHD, dyslexia, and etc. And that for the first time, he isn't alone. He then goes on to tell Percy the purpose of Camp Half-Blood is to build the foundation for demigods to earn Kleos, which is glory. Demigods are always trying to live up to the legacies of their parents. Percy gets pushed to the ground by Clarice. Percy just can't escape the bullying everywhere he goes. So Clarice is actually the daughter of Ares, the Greek god of war, so there is a big aggressive nature to her character. Percy ends up having his solo offering in the forest by burning one of the blue candy that his mom gave him in the bag, in the hopes that she is listening. He basically gives a diary entry and talks about his time at Camp Half-Blood so far, and that he's feeling very hopeful and that he's going to make his father claim him. Percy heads back to the cabin and we hear an owl hooting, which signs point to Annabeth being nearby. Percy runs into Clarice and her flock of Ares kids again, and they end up ganging up on Percy. They're about to stuff his face in the toilet when the water just flushes automatically and a burst of water just splashes onto Clarice and the other Ares kids, causing them to run away. No wonder their house back home always had plumbing issues. Percy finally formally meets Annabeth, which she confesses to stalking him as per the owls we keep seeing. She wants to use Percy to win Capture the Flag, as she's been waiting for proof or a sign of why Percy is so powerful, and if Percy is the key to her finally being able to join a quest. Now, prior to Capture the Flag, Luke tells Percy that Annabeth is his little sister. Now, this is a metaphorical because Luke and Annabeth are actually cousins, because Athena is the half-sister of Ares, which makes them cousins. But because they're related and they've been so close and they basically grew up together, he acts more of like a big brother to her. Luke tells Percy about the backstory of how he met Annabeth, how Thalia, who was also with them, is considered a forbidden demigod as the daughter of Zeus because she was born after Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades agreed not to have any more children because they were getting too powerful. Forbidden demigods are always attracting monsters and demons because the gods aren't there to protect them as much due to them being forbidden. So forbidden demigods are basically demigods born after Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades all made that pact to not have any more children because their children were ending up too powerful. Percy is also another demigod who is always attracting demons and monsters, so could he be forbidden as well? Thalia didn't make it, but Annabeth and Luke survived and have been family ever since. I sense Luke has a big disdain for the gods because of what he went through during his struggles, surviving with no help basically from them with Annabeth and Thalia, which eventually cost Thalia her life. Luke tells Percy that Chiron has been promising Annabeth for years for a quest, and that Chiron says a demigod who was fated to go on a quest would arrive and Annabeth would be able to join that quest, which is why she has been using owls to stalk Percy, because Percy may be that demigod. Capture the Flag begins, and Annabeth tells Percy to stick by her. This has got to be my favorite scene so far in the series. The action, setting, and cinematography was done so well, really captures the essence of Camp Half-Blood and puts basically the descriptions of the book into a visual setting. I love how the invisibility hat that Annabeth has is a Yankee hat, go Yankees. Percy is just relaxing and keeping watch when he gets confronted again by Clarice and the Aries kids. They attack and chase after him until they get by the pond. Percy starts fending Clarice and the Aries kids off and gets the upper hand. Percy is able to fend them off because he is near water, which makes him stronger. Just son of Poseidon thing. Percy ends up breaking Clarice's staff as Luke and the rest of the campers claim victory for Capture the Flag. Annabeth was lurking, watching the whole fight between Percy and Clarice go down, and she also noticed how Percy got considerably stronger near the water. Percy asks Annabeth why she didn't help him, as she helps Percy up just to push him into the water, and then we see Poseidon's trident hover over Percy as he is now claimed. Percy confronts Chiron and Mr. D, and Chiron tells Percy that Zeus and Poseidon have been fighting over the fact that Zeus's master boat has gone missing, and that Zeus and Mr. D possibly think Percy is responsible since Percy is a forbidden demigod. This is why Poseidon has been taking his time to claim him and has been trying to fend off the allegations against his son. Chiron tells Percy that Zeus gave him an ultimatum that if Poseidon does not return the boat to Zeus by the summer solstice, which will be in a week, there will be war. Now, gods going to war is very different from just humans going to war. Many innocent lives are taken when gods go to war on a global scale. It can cause endless destruction. Poseidon theorizes that Hades may have the bolt in the underworld and that he needs Percy's help to go retrieve it. This becomes a quest that Percy must go on. Percy initially refuses, but what motivates Percy more in going is the possibility that his mother may have vanished to the underworld, and that is how we close out the episode. This episode was a lot of content-heavy episode as Percy is navigating his beginning steps at Camp Half-Blood. We see him finally get claimed to be the son of Poseidon, and the way that this episode was just paced was very well, and this was a really great episode as well. So again, thank you all for tuning in. If you are messing with the content, if you're liking the channel, if you're liking the recaps, give a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications. I will be doing my best to recap every episode that comes out of Percy Jackson, Olympians, the Disney Plus series. So make sure you're keeping in tune with that by turning on post notifications to see when a new video will drop. And like always, thank you all for tuning in, and I will see y'all in the next video.